Muted.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the webinar this morning on how to become a legal industry authority. Can you all hear me okay? If one of you can just say yes, that'll be great. You may need to have entered in your, perfect, thanks Jenny. You may need to have entered your audio pin. If you have, you should be able to hear me. If not, then you might need to just click on the audio pin button and dial in again. The webinar is being recorded, so we will send this out later on. So if anybody misses anything, then they can listen to the recording later on. In terms of the housekeeping, if everyone can just, if they are dialed into the audio, if you can just mute your microphone, there should be a little microphone button either on your headset or on your computer or via the GoToWebinar app that you can see there. So if you could do that, that'd be great. There will be time later on for questions. So we're going to be roughly 30 minutes. There'll be 15 minutes time at the end for some questions. Some people have already sent in some questions in advance of the webinar, which is great. So we'll cover those off. In terms of previous webinars, so this is the final webinar in a series of 4 based on content marketing to assist the legal sector. They are available for download on our either on our legal resources section on our website, or also on the website there's a TV and radio page where we store all of the podcasts and all of the webinars that we do. So please feel free to download those recordings as well. They do follow a theme. It is a content marketing for the legal sector theme, but please feel free to download any individual ones that you want. They can be dealt with as separate webinars as well. So if you don't mind just muting your audio, any questions we can either bring you in to ask your questions live, or there is a chat pane that you can see on the right hand side of your screen or the top. Just fire any questions as we're going through into the chat pane, excuse me, and I will look at those as they pop through towards the end. The reason why we do that is just so that we can try and keep the timings as good as we can on these webinars. So we try and keep it around 30 minutes of me talking and giving some good tips around these topics, which I'm looking forward to do today. And there's some time at the end there where we can have a bit more of an open discussion if need be, or I can just answer any questions that you send via the chat. If you want to put your name down, great. If you want to keep it anonymous, no problems at all. Okay, let's get started. So you've noticed the title, so how to become a legal industry authority. We are talking, of course, about content marketing. We're not talking about any legal authority or anything else. That's your expertise. Our expertise, of course, is as an agency, is working with legal clients from a digital marketing point of view. So the tips that we're going to give you today are based on content marketing and how to become an industry authority in that area, which leads quite nicely on to, well, why would you need to be an industry authority? Well, a number of reasons. First of all, the word authority in any industry or any profession even equates to a number of different attributes, I guess. So when you think of somebody as an authority, whether they're a television presenter, whether they're a football pundit, or whether they're in the professional services space, you always think of a number of words. You think of expertise, you think of knowledge and understanding, you think of honesty, you think of experience, you think of many other different derivatives or attributes that go along with becoming an industry authority, all of which in the legal space you'll want to be presented as in front of your clients. So you'll want your clients or the claimants that come through your websites to feel that you're going to handle their case with the greatest of care, with the greatest of attention. Now, most law firms would say, yes, we do that, and I'm sure that you guys do, but we need to try and convey that as often as possible as we can in our marketing and in our outreach work, I guess. So we need our clients and our claimants to feel comfortable with us, and that's why we really want to go down the authority route, essentially. Some of the slides we won't go through, I won't read rote fashion, because obviously we've got to, it's been partly designed, this webinar, really to either listen to the audio live as you are now, or to, of course, to read the slide later on. So we won't read through every single slide, but the information is there for you to go back to. But really going back to the why become an authority, partly because the of the points you've mentioned. So really, because claimants and clients want to feel confident with you, they want to feel that you know what you're talking about, they want to feel that you're up to the latest industry trends, they want to feel that they're going to be serviced correctly when they do make an inquiry. But it's important when we start to think about the higher value cases. So the big challenge these days is not really focusing on the £500 fixed fee work and generating volumes of them. Well, certainly not with the clients that we work with anyway. Most of the law firms that we speak to are more interested in the more serious part of an injury, maybe sort of spinal, maybe brain, particularly that element, because their expertise suit those type of claims. But of course, they yield higher fees as well if we're thinking of it from that point of view. So really becoming an authority becomes even more important when, you know, a claimant's got a particular debilitating injury off the back of a fairly serious road traffic accident or an accident abroad, where it's a more complex case than somebody that's slipped or tripped on the way to work, and you know, it's dealt with through, as I said, through a more of a fixed fee approach. So I guess it depends on excuse me, where you are in the spectrum of your claim. So are you more interested in lower value, higher volume, or you're more interested in the sort of lower volume but higher value cases? That's why we want to become an industry authority, more for the high value stuff, but it will of course also benefit excuse me, further down the claim spectrum, I guess. So that's why, just to take that a little bit further really, what we need to create with our content marketing in order to become a legal industry authority really is to provide a voice directly from the law firm, you guys, to the client. Previously, that voice hasn't been needed to be there because claims management companies were the biggest source of leads, if that's the right phrase. And so the law firm really could be just somebody that processes the claim. They can be somebody that has the legal knowledge that just delivers, I guess, the sort of paperwork and the processes that go along with a claim, regardless of the size. Whereas now they need to be much more of a face. They need to be much more, I guess, a personality, and for the reasons we've already discussed in terms of the content and in terms of why you'd want to become this authority. It's more of a necessity now, rather than just, it'd be quite nice to get there because we want to build our brand for sale in 5 years' time or whatever it may be. So it's really important that we focus on a tone of voice and a share of voice. And the other side of it, if we want to think about it in a bit more of a sort of broader business sense, is that content marketing within the legal clients is hot property at the minute. So your competitors will be doing it, and so it gets to be something that you just need to fold into your digital marketing strategy, which then ties into your marketing strategy, which essentially is the sort of core of the lead gen of the business really. So that's kind of really why. Let's just explore that that sort of theory a little bit further really. So an industry authority and the clients that will be attracted to you will do so because they see you as a source of knowledge. So what we're finding with our legal clients is that there is a long string of keywords that start with probably a more generic keyword and then end up with more of a tail term, so more of a string of keywords together. And that's how the higher value cases tend to get in front of a law firm in our experience. They tend to be because a particular claimant has made a number of searches over a long period of time until they've arrived at a website and felt comfortable to make the inquiry. There is a lot happens before that point, which as digital marketeers and law firms, you'll know all about that. So the first point really of why become an industry authority is because you need to be seen as a source of knowledge across a wide range of keywords, more so the tail terms to a certain degree, which is interesting, which I may revisit later on, than the generic keywords, because generally speaking, people that have got a specific serious injury are familiar with the medical variations of that particular injury. It's not just a broken leg, it's a broken, you know, tibia or even more complex potential medical issues if there are a number of medical conditions all connected to the one injury from the one accident. So they will do a number of searches for medical definitions. They'll try and understand what a particular medical definition is first. You know, if they've got a hospital appointment on Friday, they will do a number of searches, and we did a piece of research on this. They'll do a number of searches up to that point before they actually go and see the doctor, so that they aren't just hit with this is what it is, and they may even know what the treatment is. So what law firms need to really think about is, rather than trying to appear as high up as they can on personal injury or accident abroad, they need to have a focus both on that as their core targets, which is understandable and fine. That's where a lot of your traffic is going to come from. But they tend to, in our experience, ignore the longer tail keywords, which part of becoming an industry authority, part of building content marketing and the outreach that's associated with it, it will address that. It will address the visibility of certain articles that you create as part of your content marketing. That's how they'll be found. They'll be found in Google News, and that's where your particular audience will be searching. So really, the first point is you need to be seen as a source or a fountain of knowledge, essentially. The second point really is there is value, potentially less value to a certain extent, but value in just being seen on general industry terms, essentially. So what's happening in the next 6 months in terms of claims? What's the latest legislation? How's it changing? That type of knowledge, in addition to just volume of content about specific injuries and medical definitions of those injuries, is also quite important to be seen, because not so much from your target personas, which we'll come on to in a second, but more from the wider industry, that it will start to have a side effect of building your brand, really, which, of course, when we're trying to grow the business, that's also part of what we're trying to do with content marketing. So try and look at predicting industry trends, try and look at you know, what claims are what's the highest potentially claims in the Northeast compared to Liverpool, or what's the, you know, that type of industry trend, and I'll give you an example of that a little bit later on and how that can work. We'll come on to this next in a bit more detail, but what your content marketing will force you to do is what we call constant persona review. It'll be identifying a persona, creating content for that specific persona, monitoring the traffic and where they come into the site and where they leave the site, and then tailoring and reviewing and amending that persona on an ongoing basis. Very much like SEO as a broader campaign, of which we're talking about part of today. Very much like SEO, it's an organic process, which essentially means it never ends, really, to a certain extent. It's something that needs to be continually revisited, and the more it gets revisited, the more accurate the content, the more accurate the targets, and essentially the higher volume and higher valuable leads that you'll get off the back of it, essentially. So this process particularly is really quite important, and also why it's good to become an industry authority from a content marketing point of view. And then finally, we've already touched on this, really, but essentially becoming an industry authority will help your SEO rankings, which will help the volume of leads that you generate, essentially. The quality of content that you create and how accurate that is to the personas that you are targeting will have a direct impact on the quality of leads that you generate through your SEO, or through SEO as a channel. We've spent many years, 9 years, working with law firms, and over the time we've tailored our approach and the types of content that we create very specifically to generating a variety of lead types. So you'll start to find very quickly, when you identify your persona, a certain type of content will bring a certain type of lead. If you look at your leads and you're not happy with the value, the quality or the value of the claims, or the types of claims, or the location, more often than not, you can map it back to individual content pieces that are created. And if you then go back to this process here, which is review your personas and review whether you are on point with that targeting, more often than not, you aren't, essentially. So we need to try and understand better the types of leads that are coming in, work that back to the types of content that you're creating. Is that positioning yourself as an industry authority? If it is it targeting the right personas? If that is the case, then in theory you should have some good value leads coming in, not just through your SEO channel, but also through direct and referral and other channels as well, because content will influence other channels through your digital marketing mix. Now that's getting on to attribution modeling, which we discussed in a previous, I believe it was in webinar 1, so it's worth having a little download of that and look at that. But attribution modeling is really key to getting a good grasp on that when you start to do content marketing, because what you'll tend to find is that your content marketing will drive your SEO visibility and drive your SEO channel. But what it will also do is it will support your PPC activity, it will support your online display, it will support your the value of the direct channel, and also, of course, the referral channel as well. So it's nice and easy to speak to an SEO agent and say, increase my rankings. You look at your rankings, you look at your traffic, you look at your leads, give them a thumbs up, or kick them out the back door, as the case may be. But with content, it's very much more of a broader reach. It's a broader brush. And so tracking, which is also we touched on in webinar 1 and the sort of more generic of the webinars in this series, will give you a guide as to how we would advise you going about that as well. And then finally, when you become an industry authority, when you start to create high volumes of good quality content that's targeted at very specifically at your personas, your SEO rankings will increase, both in terms of your tail terms and the visibility thereof, and also in terms of your generic keywords as well. So it's essentially essential, if that's the right way to say it. Okay, let's just have a little look at taking the first steps. This is where we go into the personas in a bit more detail. Some great tips here. So first of all, you need to create the personas, and that can be really quite a fun experience. So what we do is we get our internal legal team here to sit together, and they're quite creative people, and so we take the typical claimant demographics from our law clients, we put them on a table, we look at Google Trends. So if you're making notes, the first things first is get the typical demographic, age, location, gender, size of claim, get those basic information that you can take from all of your clients' files essentially, or even just from the actual inquiry that comes to the website. Look at that. Look at Google Trends. If you type in Google Trends into Google, it will give you an idea as to the types of keywords and therefore the types of claims that are more prevalent at certain times of the year. And then we go to work with a piece of software. Hot tip here, so if you make a note of makemypersona.com, it's highlighted there in that slide, makemypersona.com, and that is an online tool that allows you to essentially answer a load of questions based on Web Trends data and based on your current client data, and it'll allow you to just answer a number of questions based on that, and at the end of that process that you go through, it will essentially give you your personas for you. Or, just to correct myself there, it will give you the first take on what your personas are. Now you could decide on looking at one persona, you could decide on looking at 2 or 3 personas. My advice is don't go more than 3. The reason being is that to each persona there almost needs to be a content marketing strategy for each one that includes SEO. So if you've got an SEO agency at the moment, make sure that they are understanding of the work that you are starting to take out. Make sure they understand why you're building personas, because essentially the types of keywords right the way through to the types of articles and types of tracking will all fall and cascade down from these personas that you can create using your current data, and also makemypersona.com as well. It's a tool that we use for our own personas, so it's really really valuable essentially. So definitely do that. When you're going through your personas, make it fun if you can. Sit around a table, put aside an hour. What we do is we basically go through a load of research, go through the Make My Persona work. We actually pick an image from iStock of what we think that persona looks like, and we come up with some really, well, we think they're really interesting and really funny names. They're probably not, but things like Legal Lisa, or things like Semi-Retired Sam, different terms that allow you to then position a particular picture with a set of interests. So Semi-Retired Sam spends this time in his car, he does this on a weekend, he enjoys going to the theatre, going to the opera, he's less likely to make a lower value claim, more likely to make a high value claim based on a more serious accident. And so start to really build a persona up, and then narrow those areas down to bullet points and put them in one PowerPoint slide with the image, with the name of the guy, Semi-Retired Sam, for example. Print it out and stick it on your walls. Share it with partners in the business, share it with the receptionist, share it with everybody, and try and get everybody involved in what you're trying to create essentially. I think sometimes where people fall down in content marketing is they essentially just think content marketing is just a case of writing content and getting out there somehow, or just creating a 400-word blog article, put it on my site, once a week, and then I can just disappear and carry on with my normal claims management work or whatever it may be. It's not the case. It's got to really go to the core of the business. It's got to go right from the very top, right through marketing, right through to the people, the fee earners, right through to reception. And when they pick up the phone, if they've got semi-retired Sam in front of them on a screen, they'll know who to direct. So there's quite a lot of work that needs to go into that, but definitely look at makemypersona.com, and it will make more sense what I've just said, but I can't emphasize how important it is to start with the persona before you put pen to paper. So we've got our 1, 2, 3 personas. So essentially, what happens next? Well, certainly this is where a lot of people fall down. Setting up a persona is a bit time-consuming, but essentially it's fairly straightforward. Where they fall down, in my experience, this is law firms that we've worked with in the past and law firms that we see doing things wrong potentially, where they fall down is what they do with the content once they've decided on the persona and they've decided to create a piece of content. It's what they either do with that, i.e. does that particular persona, so does semi-retired Sam want to read a 400-word blog article on the top 10 accidents in Newcastle? Probably not. If they're more targeted at the serious injury side of things, they're probably more interested on what the top 5 treatments are for, I don't know, a broken leg or whatever it may be. So you've got to understand, first of all, the persona, then where the fall down bit is the types of content that you create for that specific persona, and then finally, what you do with it. So where does it go? How's it sent out? How's semi-retired Sam going to find you when he's got no idea who you are, he's got no idea about any other content potentially that you've created before? So how do we essentially go after and go after semi-retired Sam essentially? There are a number of ways to do that, and it starts to go into outreach, which is a big topic. But essentially, do some research, have a look at some blogs, do a website demographic research for the types of sites semi-retired Sam would spend time on. I guarantee it's not going to be a legal blog, but you may be able to strike up a relationship with another type of website that they do spend time on. Over 50 Plus is a website, over50s.com I think it is, for an example. They have a legal section on there. Why not pick the phone up and say, we specialize in working with semi-retired Sam. Obviously that's not the best way to open the phone call, but essentially you're saying, look, we specialize with semi-retired Sam, we've got this particular piece of content we think is going to be great for you, can we strike up a relationship? And a lot of the time, if the content is good, if it's worth having on their site, they will take it on and there will be no fee exchange for doing so. And then once you start to build a relationship, they will take more and more content from you. Now, we've got a number of pieces of software that help us do that quickly, but there's no reason why you can't start to do that on a manual process and start to do a bit of research about what the watering hole of semi-retired Sam is. Just conscious of time, we're up to 29 minutes already. So any more questions on that, then fire those into the chat, and we'll cover that off towards the end. There might be a bit more time to give you some more insight onto that essentially. So in terms of what you've probably seen, you're on the webinar probably because you've either seen some of our work elsewhere and wanted to hear a bit more about it, or you noticed your competitors doing a bit more content marketing and wanted to get a bit more of an understanding. So I thought I'd just share with you 2 examples of what we've done for our existing clients. You can find these, I think you can find these on our TV and radio and our legal resources pages on our website, which is hitsearchlimited.com. So have a look on that. Buzz me in the chat if you're not sure. I can send you the link through there. So just 2 very quick examples. I'm just coming towards the end here now. First things first, content doesn't need to be, hopefully it's come across, a 400-word blog article. It needs to be actually much more than that. The 2 examples I've given you here are more visual examples. That doesn't mean to say that a 400-word blog article isn't important and isn't valuable. But what it does mean is that that it needs to be supported by something that semi-retired Sam wants to engage with. So you need to go all the way back to personas and work out what that persona wants to read, what's valuable to them, and then decide on the creative format. So is it infographic? Is it a longer form content? So if you look at some of you on the webinar, noticed have also downloaded our legal content marketing ebook that accompanies this webinar series. I definitely advise you to do that, partly because that's another example of what we call longer form content that you could create. It's about 1,500 to 2,000 words. It's got a load of tips in for legal clients of how to engage with content marketing, what the benefits are. So why not create something like that for semi-retired Sam? Why not put, speak to some consultants that are specialists in a certain area, and just interview them? Maybe would be a great idea. One thing we've done before: interview a consultant, buy them lunch, or pay for an hour of their time, which I'm sure they'll be happy to do. For the sake of £150 consultancy fee for an hour, it's worth doing, and you can ask them a load of questions, ask them what the best pain relief is, ask them what the best treatment processes are, and then with that one bigger piece of content, you can then spin 4 or 5 400-word blog articles from that, 2 infographics. You can do an interview, you can create a podcast from it, you can create a video of the interview. So all of a sudden you've done one big piece of work that's cost you £150 worth of consultancy fees, and then from that you've almost got 4 or 5 weeks worth of content that spans everything from the visual form to the more technical form to everything else. So 2 examples. First of all, this is an infographic. Apologies about the quality of the image. It's obviously much better in real life, but it just gives you an example here for one of our clients. They were targeting the more serious injury side of things, and particularly this one was created to sort of say, look, these are the signs of brain injury. So going along the lines of sport and injuries, and also more to do with head injuries from an accident, for a car accident or at work. So that was the focus here to a certain degree. And so just something as interesting visually as that, and all of the symptoms around the outside of, and what you need to do according to it, just really positions this particular law firm to a very specific target audience, which I won't go into because that's confidential from their point of view, but certainly it was targeted by ourselves at a very specific audience, very low number of people, but the response rates from that were massive, both in terms of, and that's a good point actually, what is a response rate from a piece of content. So we're looking at things like views of that particular piece of creative, wherever that is, whether it's on somebody else's site or our own client's website. We're looking at page views, so if there's a link on there, clicks and page views are important. So what we'd always put on there, and you can see, click here for more information. You click from this image and go through to a specifically created landing page on this client's website. So you measure people and how long they look on that page, whether they go to other pages within the site, how long they spend on the site after arriving from this particular infographic, how many times it's been socially shared, so we included some social share buttons on this, and finally, and most importantly, inquiries and phone calls. In our experience, the more serious the injury, the more detailed the medical issues connected to the injury, the higher the likely, by 90% and above, the more likely that individual client or claimant will be to make a phone call than an inquiry on a website. Really important, and this, again, this is not just from working with one law firm over the past 6 months, it's working with 50, 60 law firms over the past 9 years. So make sure that again, we've covered this in that, I believe it's webinar 1 or 2, but we covered this in terms of phone tracking and how you can do that quite straightforward and quite simply. It's really important if you're going after the more serious injury side of the equation. One more example, not a great example because this is what we call an interactive infographic for a different law firm. A great tip, if you don't do anything else, have a look at ThingLink. You can see the logo there. I don't know whether you can see my mouse pointer, but this area here, ThingLink is a piece of software that allows you to create movable infographics. And when we're talking about outreach side of it, bloggers, news sites, over50.com is an example of our semi-retired Sam. They would love this type of creative rather than a 400-word article. So in terms of your outreach success, make sure you've got something that's a bit more engaging than just a 400-word or 200-word blog article or whatever it may be. And essentially, we can't see the functionality here, but you see the red dots. When you hover your mouse over, it pops up with a picture of Belfast or a picture of Leeds or wherever we're looking at here, and on the picture it's got a list of all of the top accidents by demographic, and strangely enough the demographic that we've picked on to highlight the accidents by and what the value of those claims were is basically the persona that we've used this particular ThingLink infographic for. So look at ThingLink. There's loads more examples. Couldn't get the functionality into this presentation, so apologies for that, but it's definitely something that you should look at. So essentially, hopefully over the last sort of 36 minutes, it should have answered the question as to, first of all, what does it mean to become an industry authority? And second of all, really, it gives you a guide on why you should do it. I think probably the title's a bit misleading of the webinar. Really, we should have put something probably a bit more salesy in terms of saying the top 10 benefits of becoming a content marketing expert. But essentially, these webinars are for you, really. They're for you to record, to listen to, take away, and use some of the tips really as opposed to it being a sales thing, really. So definitely, you know, it was worth framing it as how to become an authority, because ultimately that's what you need to do now. We can't really go through claims management companies to get the volume of claims that we once did, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I think less than that maybe. So ultimately what we want to become an authority for essentially is to achieve the goal, and the goal essentially is phone calls and inquiries from hopefully either fixed fee work and high volumes of them, or more specifically in terms of becoming an industry authority, the higher value, more serious injury claims on that spectrum basically. Just lastly, before I jump to some questions, I noticed that there is a couple of questions that have just come through, so there are a number of others as well. So please make sure, just a reminder, that the other 3 webinars are on our TV and radio page or under the legal resources. It will take you through to the TV and radio page, but it's in the top nav of our website. Definitely download. Some are a little bit longer. We've tried to be as time sensitive as we can, but some of the questions took us a little bit longer than the 45 minutes time. The other thing we're offering, please don't share this around, otherwise we'll get a lot of law firms asking for some freebies. But basically, to the attendees of the webinar, if you're interested, please feel free to get in touch. We'll drop you through this in an email later on. But we can have a look at your content plan for you. We'll just spend half an hour talking you through it, or we can create part of, not a full content plan, but sort of point you on the right road, as long as it doesn't take any more sort of than half an hour of our time. Sorry for being a bit stingy, but if everyone wants 4 hours of our time, and I think there's 10 people on the call, then obviously that's quite a difficult thing to do from our point of view as a freebie. But certainly half an hour, happy to do that. It'll be with me, so you can use that 30-minute session for us to review your content plan, to set you on a new plan and put you in the right direction. Or, I mean, it's not listed down here, but if you want to just have 30 minutes of my time on the phone, just to sort of fire a load of questions out, then I'm happy to do that as well. But please don't mention that to anybody else. It's only for the attendees of the webinar. Okay, so thanks Stacey, Jenny and Angie for letting me know you can hear me. That's always good. Okay, so Helen, she's our marketing team, has picked up 2 questions from Twitter. Please feel free in the chat box if you want to drop me a quick question. We've got about 5 or 6 minutes left, so feel free to get me while I'm here, as it were. You can do that by just clicking on chat, and then there's a drop down. It says to everyone, or in the drop down it also says to anyone specifically, so you can send it directly to me if you want, or you can put it as a group message. So first of all, Helen said 2 questions from Twitter. 1, I know you've given a brief overview as the importance of trying to become a legal industry authority, but why should we really care about becoming an authority? Question mark. Good question. Is it to eventually get leads? What is the real purpose? Well, kind of going back to the first couple of points on the webinar, really, the end goal is to generate phone calls and leads of a certain value. What we're not interested in doing is, and we have this conversation with our law clients all the time, we don't want to generate 500 leads in a month and only 10 of them are worth, you know, out of the 10, they're the ones that have moved forward into an accepted case, and out of the 10, 9 of them are £500 work. If that is what you want, there will be other ways of generating £500 fixed fee work. Maybe look at Facebook. So we did a legal content marketing social webinar, which I think was webinar 2 or webinar, in fact I think it was webinar 3. So that might be worth looking at that, because you give you some examples of how to go after maybe the lower end of the claim spectrum there. But mainly what we're interested in is generating potentially a lower volume, but out of the 10 that we do generate in a month, we want 9 of them to become accepted cases, and out of the 9, 8 of them are all, you know, 500,000, 300,000, 200,000, £1 million case. Now, we know the gestation period is going to be maybe a year or two for a more serious injury, but our task as marketeers is to fill that pipeline today, tomorrow, the day after. And so we really need to, I guess, have a focus on becoming an authority in the content marketing space at generating the leads, essentially. And the last part of that, what is the real purpose? We've kind of answered that one. Second question, this is the last one. I think nobody else has asked any other questions. Number 2, how do you know when you're industry authority? Great question. We've tried bits here and there, but nothing seems to have happened. It is a cyclical, love that word, process that you shouldn't expect immediate results from. So you've partly answered your question towards the end there, but let's take the first bit. How do you know your industry authority? You don't, really, I think is the best answer. But what you will have feedback on is the volume of leads that you get in. So you become an authority when traffic to your website increases and you're getting more leads, more accurate leads, and you're communicating frequently and constantly updating a target persona. That's when you're certainly on the road. I think if anyone in the legal space walks around and says that they are the definitive content marketing authority for all legal clients, it's not the case, because ultimately they may have different personas to target than you guys do. So that, you know, it really varies. Really, you need to set your own metrics as to how you determine success, and know how partners will determine the success, and that's if you're generating £3 million cases every day. Of course, so if that's your success, then that's what you need to work towards. We tried bits here and there, and nothing seems to have happened. Okay, so might be worth noting some numbers down. So in terms of the volume of content you need to create, and this is an ideal. This is what we create, and we get success from it. So this is what sort of Content Marketing Institute states that you need to generate. You need to generate minimum 3 articles a week, preferable 5. So 1 a day if preferable. Sometimes we edge into 2 a day as a matter of interest. You need to and that's basic blog articles. You need 1 what we call longer form content per month. And if you look at the Legal Content Marketing ebook, if you download that once we've finished here, again, that's in the legal resources section or TV and radio page on our website. That is a good example of long-form content. So going back to the example that we gave about semi-retired Sam, just listen over to the webinar casting again once we send the recording, and there's a good example in there of what that longer-form content could be for you guys. So going back to, is it a cyclical process? Yes, it is, because when you release content, it's what we call evergreen, so it's there forever. Nobody can take that content down. It's just out there. And so it has an exponential effect, day on day, week on week, month on month, and it builds and builds and builds and builds and builds. More and more traffic, more and more traffic, more and more traffic, and it just grows exponentially, because the first piece of content that you launched on day 1 is still there at the end of day 10, at the end of day 30, at the end of day 300. So at the end of day 300, for example, you've got 300 pieces of content that's now visible, where on day 1 you had none or 1. So it's cyclical because you need to continue to do it, and don't give up after a month or 2 months or 3 months or 4 months. We look at 12-month cycles. So content that we're talking about now was planned 12 months ago, essentially. So don't lose the faith, whoever that was. And just to answer that last bit, yeah, don't expect immediate results. Definitely not. So Jenny's got a question, tracking question. Do you track activity via separate tools or link everything via analytics, for example? Great question, Jenny. So let me think, what's the best tool that we could give you an example of? So, well, we use HubSpot as a content management system. And what that allows us to do is it allows us to track each individual article. It allows us to track each individual response from a piece of content, and it allows us to look at everything from page views, data, the amount of leads that each individual content has produced. Now, HubSpot might be good for you, might not be. There are other CMS systems out there. One's called Acton, that might be worth doing that. There are a number of just blog reporting software. Of course, WordPress is a great blog, but it doesn't give you a lot of functionality. I'd advise you to look at Acton, A-C-T-O-N, I think it's all one word, and also HubSpot. They're not cheap, but they do give you data all in one area. Having said that, you've already given a great example there really in terms of analytics. Google Analytics is probably the best and most frequently used of all of the clients that we deal with. And you can create a bespoke report that follows what HubSpot will do basically, which is from an article positioned somewhere away from your site, it'll follow traffic back onto the site, and then you can follow it straight through to inquiry there and even phone call. We track activity via separate tools, yes, but we do bring everything together in that one tool, if that makes sense. So HubSpot, for example, can tell you what your blog has done, what each article within your blog has done. It can talk about direct traffic, your SEO, your organic traffic, your paid traffic, your email traffic. It can talk about all of those things in one space, but they are dealt with as separate pieces of kit. But the easiest thing is it's all in one space. So I'm sure if you did some research, Jenny, you'd be able to find a blog piece of kit, but then you'd have to then look at GA for your organic results, then you might have to look at GA for your paid results, then you might have to look at, you know, MailChimp for your email or whatever it may be. So if you can, try to sort of bring everything together, as it were. Does that answer your question, Jenny? Just give us a quick thumbs up if that's okay, or if not, I can go into a bit more detail. No problems at all, you're welcome. Any other questions before we, just looking through, before we come to an end? Don't think, there we go. Let's have a look at the chat. I know, Jen, I'm sorry about that, but it's the necessary evil Jen just said, but I really hate analytics. Yeah, sorry about that, but it's not the easiest of tools to work with, but yeah, it's one of those necessary evils, unfortunately. One thing I'd give some advice on that though is maybe if you try and look at the custom reporting section in that, it is a bit of a faff to sort of have a play around with, but once it's done, it runs reports automatically for you, so it might save some time on a weekly basis that you may be struggling with. Okay, guys, if no other questions, just want to thank you for your attendance. Really appreciate your time, and hope you found it useful. We will send the recording out later on today. Hope you enjoy your day, and speak to you soon.